They're already predicting that this will be an offseason full of trades. And I did the deal in the Locked On Mock Draft. What I did, what I learned, and the cost of doing business today on Locked On Magic.
You are Locked On Magic, your daily Orlando Magic podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And you are indeed Locked On Magic. Today is May 28th. It will be May 29th, 2025. Almost NBA Finals time. Almost NBA Draft time. My name, of course, is Philip Rossman-Reich. I'm the senior writer over at OrlandoMagicDaily.com. A credentialed member of the Orlando Magic media since 2011. Long time covering this Orlando Magic team. On today's episode of Locked On Magic, we wrapped up the Locked On NBA mock draft. Well, we'll get to some of the full results and kind of what they mean a little bit closer to draft time. I am noting this now for posterity that we did the draft in late May. I don't think it comes out till mid-June. So a lot's going to change. I'll talk about what I did, what I learned, what that means for the Magic, and then, of course, what the cost of doing business will be. We'll talk about all that coming up here in just a moment. First, we do want to thank you again for making Locked On Magic your first listen of the day. Every day, we truly appreciate you. Our first listeners, we truly appreciate our everyday listeners. You guys are the best. You can find a Locked On podcast covering every single team in the NBA. Just search for Locked On and the team you're looking for. It's all part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode of Locked On Magic is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. We do this project every year. We do the Locked On NBA mock draft. All the Locked On NBA hosts take over their teams. We talk deals. We make trades. We go a little crazier than I think the league usually goes, but I just think this year we went about how this might go, or saw some things that we might go. So let's just put all the caveats out there to begin with. First, I am still very early in my draft prep. Not very early. I am kind of midway through my draft prep. So like I always do, we do this mock draft very early in the process, or a little bit earlier in the process than I would like for preparation purposes. And so as Jeff Weltman always likes to say, you could do the draft a day later and it would be completely different than the draft the day before, or a week before, or a week later. Everything changes constantly. Like, the wrong team could lose in the playoffs here and decide to do something drastic. So I want to put all that on the table. I will talk about what I did here in a minute. The last warning that I want to put out on the table first is this is an exercise. And so just like when I see rumors, just like when I see people say, oh, the Magic are connected to this player, or the Magic should go after this player, I always say, like, the rumor is irrelevant, because most of the time rumors are about a week, 2 weeks behind reality. It's more about what does that rumor say about the Magic's thinking. And look, I'm taking over the Magic here. It is not inside information. It's educated guessing. And so what I'm going to talk about today is very much, this is what I did in my seat with someone who is not, the other general manager in their seat. This is just, what can we learn about the way things may play out when you're dealing with two people with their own interests, their own ideas, their own things that they're trying to accomplish. How does that shake out? So this is what I'm about to tell you, that I did in this mock draft, is not to say this is what the Magic should do. I have problems with what I did. I'm going to address those problems throughout the course of the episode. I am not 100% on board with what I did. I did it. I felt like it was necessary to do it, but I did it. Kill me, rake me over the coals. It's fair. I'm honestly with you. I honestly wanted a little bit more time to consider some other things and explore some other options. And, the draft clock ticks and waits for no one. I got put on the clock a little bit. I made the decision I made. I'm cool living with it. I'm cool sharing it with you, obviously. I'm cool putting it out there in the world. But I want to make sure I note that there are problems. There are flaws. There are things to poke holes in. I did not complete an Isaiah Hartenstein trade this time. Or maybe I did. We'll find out. this is about the process and what it means about what the Magic might be looking for. And look, I hope you come to me and say, oh, this is a person that is smart, is not, flying off the handle. It takes the time to sit down and think. I may be wrong. I'm not afraid to admit when I'm wrong. I'm not afraid to say, this is not what I'm thinking. Maybe it is. Maybe I am thinking like Magic. Maybe I'm not. There are a lot of options out there. And that's honestly where I want to start. The biggest thing that I learned doing this process, and look, I'm like Jeff Weltman. I am not an aggressive person by nature. I do like to see things come to me. I am, going to poke and prod a little bit for things that interest me, but I'm not out there surveying the entire league. I came into this mock draft very focused and saying, I want to look at 3 specific players. And we're actually going to talk about those 3 specific players throughout this episode. Before I'm 6 minutes in, I'm burying the lead here a little bit. But I entered this mock draft saying, I am going to specifically target the players that I think the Magic should go after. And those 3 players, you guessed it, Anfernee Simons, Collin Sexton, Austin Reeves. I had some talks with the Lakers before we even got into the mock draft. We all kind of understood there was a baseline, at least for us to make a deal. And look, I got down to it. I had options. And I think that is the biggest takeaway that I had from this mock draft experience. I had the Pelicans offer me CJ McCollum. I wasn't particularly interested. He's an expiring deal at $30 million. He'd help, but he's a short-term fix, and I'm not looking for short-term fixes. I'm looking for someone that can be with the team for a little bit longer than that. I put in a bid for Malik Monk and got a nibble and had a deal on the table for Malik Monk. I believe our friend Matt George from Locked On Kings, I don't think he cares that I'm revealing this. Our friend Matt George from Locked On Kings offered me. I said, hey, I'd be interested in Malik Monk. What would it cost? He said, AB, the 16th pick in Terrence Davis, or AB, the 16th pick for Malik Monk and Terrence Davis. I think there's KCP in there too. So AB, KCP, the 16th pick for Malik Monk and Terrence Davis. It's a little too rich for me. I tried to get Keon Ellis. He said that was a non-starter. I was like, okay, I understand that. I'm not quite in on Terrence Davis. I personally, I am still very hesitant to trade Anthony Black. I know that there's a price coming on him a little bit down the road that I didn't want to sell out completely on him. I did have, at the end of the day, I came down to 2 deals that I really liked for Anfernee Simons and Collin Sexton. And the fact that neither cost me Anthony Black or Jonathan Isaac said a lot to me. Honestly, that said the most to me. That I can get probably my top 2 targets. Simons and Sexton are my top 2 targets on this trade market. The fact that I could get both without giving up my most valuable trade assets, and that would be Anthony Black and Jonathan Isaac, the fact I could get either of them without giving up one of those 2 players and keeping those players in reserve, that to me says that A, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope still has value, and B, that I have the ability to make another move down the road. Ultimately, I had 2 deals on the table. I got put on the clock for one of them, and I ultimately decided Anfernee Simons was the right target for me. The trade that I completed in this mock draft is I traded the 16th pick, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, and I picked up Gary Harris's option and traded Gary Harris to the Portland Trail Blazers for Anfernee Simons and 2 future second-round picks. My reasoning on that, and I agree that is giving up a lot. My reasoning on that is I am upgrading my starter position in Kentavious Caldwell-Pope with Anfernee Simons. I'm giving up a player in Gary Harris that I had no intention of signing anyway, of bringing back anyway. I was going to decline that option, take that $8 million in savings. And then I am giving up, the 16th pick is the cost of doing business. It's just, that's what it costs to get off Kenny's contract. In that deal, the reason why I picked Simons and the deal that I had on the table for Collin Sexton was Cole Anthony in the 16th pick for Collin Sexton, which is objectively a very good deal. I ultimately decided Simons was the better option because of the upside of his scoring. I felt personally that Simon's salary, I don't think is going to change very much. I think you can get him back for about the same amount that he is currently getting paid, which is $28 million a year. So even if you bump that up to 30, do a 3 for 90, I don't think you're killing yourself at the end of the day. And again, we'll get into some of that here in a minute. The upside of Simons scoring and 3-point shooting just outweighs all the things I really like about Sexton. And Sexton's a better defender, a better competitor. I just wonder if he is ultimately a better scorer. Now, you may disagree with that analysis. There are numbers that would suggest that maybe Sexton is a more value pick. Obviously, he's cheaper. The biggest concern that I have with what I did is by picking up Gary Harris's option, I made myself a first apron team at the start of the season. I made myself a first apron team, and it hasn't been it was not challenged by the commissioner because we completed it under the 2025 cap, but perhaps picking up Gary Harris's option and trading him so quickly is not legal. And then the Magic are over the first apron and they can't do this deal because you're taking in more money than you send out. But ultimately, I've come around on the Simons idea because I do believe the Magic can teach bad defenders to be passable defenders. Now, whether that works in the playoffs or not, we'll find out, but let's get there first. The offensive burst and offensive boost the Magic would get from Simons' presence, I think would be transformative. And the Magic need volume shooting. They need someone who can create his own shot. They need someone that can take over a game should Paolo or Franz miss time. And I think ultimately that's why I pursued Simons more than any other player. And at the end of the day, look, my goal, I've had 3 goals this offseason. Find a starter caliber guard to play next to Jalen Suggs. That Anfernee Simons checks that box off. And then ultimately to upgrade the Cole Anthony, Gary Harris spots. And that part is still to be accomplished. And we're going to get to who I picked with number 25 here later in the draft as well. And I still have like 2 huge trade pieces, if not 3 huge trade pieces to make later on in the summer. So I'll admit this. I have my reservations. I got put on the clock. It was a deal I was looking to accept. I was trying to navigate another trade and trying to see if the Sexton thing was still alive. I'll let our friends from Locked On Jazz tell you about that trade. But ultimately, this is the kind of risk the Magic are going to have to take. So ultimately, the takeaway is Orlando has options. They can make, I am confident after this experiment, the Magic can make deals without giving up their biggest trade assets. The problem is what happens on the back end. And this is not just an issue with Simons, although this was my biggest concern in making this deal. The Magic are going to have to pay the piper. It doesn't matter who they pursue. It doesn't matter which option they pursue. There is a cost to doing business. I want to discuss that cost coming up here in just a moment. But first, today's episode of Locked On Magic is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. The NBA playoffs are in full swing, and every night delivers highlight-worthy performances, major momentum shifts, and can't-miss moments. Whether it's a game-winning shot or a breakout player, there's never been a better time to get in on the action. FanDuel makes it easy to stay in the game before tip-off and live. With player props, performance trends, and same-game parlays, fans have more ways than ever to play smart and win big. When you try to track the trends to help you build your next bet and find the next player to show up in the big moment, FanDuel has you covered. And how could a $200 bonus in bets add to the excitement if your first $5 bet hits? They give you all the options, all the ability to make gaming that much more fun. Due to FanDuel, it's the perfect time to sign up. Head to FanDuel.com and place your first $5 bet. If it wins, you'll get $200 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. Let's make this next part clear. Like, I'm going to send it out. I'm going to put it out on a graphic. I'm going to let you grade my trade. I will be the first to tell you, again, I have reservations about it. And I'm not going to be upset if you disagree with the trade, if I think I gave up too much, if I jeopardize the Magic's financials too much. That is a fair concern. And so I would say this is the other part of the experiment that made it clear to me. There is no easy answer. the Magic are going to have to jeopardize and risk something to make the kind of trade that we're all expecting them to make. Now, there are other options out there. It is possible to make a Darius Garland trade without giving up Jalen Suggs. It is possible that the Magic are going to go big in ways that we're not expecting. I would say I'm expecting them to fish for the Austin Reeves, for the Colin Sexton, for the Anfernee Simons. I think that is the range they're going for because of their financial constraints. Now, you probably hate me for bringing this up every single time, but this is the reality. This is the reality. The Magic are flirting with the first apron. They are going to be a tax team next year. Even if you had only their guaranteed salaries for the 2027 season, adding in the Paolo Banchero extension at just a 25%, the Magic are flirting with the tax line already. The Magic are going to be a tax team for the foreseeable future. They'll play the repeater here very, very soon. So that means two things. One, there is an urgency to do something now. They're going to be a tax team anyway. So spend, get the high quality players. This is your window. Go out, make something of yourself. Decide if you want to be a second apron team or not. Or be prepared to retreat a little bit on payroll to get under the tax so you're not paying the extra money for a team that's just losing in the first round anyway. This is definitely the time to push the chips in a little bit, to put some skin in the game, and then to see if you can back your way out or move in another direction. Sorry, I have the Orlando City game on behind me. The Magic have to be aggressive like this. And so personally, one of my goals is to stay under the first apron. I don't want first apron restrictions quite yet. The Magic are paying the tax regardless, but I want to try and stay under the apron. And the one thing that bugged me about the deal that I made with Anfernee Simons is that it does guarantee that I'm going to be over the apron. To keep Mo Wagner, it's going to put me over that first apron. And again, the first apron restrictions are not super crazy. The biggest one is that you just can't take more money than you send out in trades. And that does make things difficult. You do have to try and cut payroll. And, again, the offseason is not complete at the draft. I would say I have one more trade I need to make before the season begins. And I actually want to go through other minimum salaries that the Magic could sign and try and find their version of Malik Beasley. There are some options out there. I am pretty confident of that. The next step in the process, though, is to understand this part too. There is no option, at least that we're discussing, and I tried to think outside the box a little bit. Before I agreed to any deals, I went through every roster and was like, let me find a guard that I'm not thinking about. And really the only one maybe I should have explored was like Devin Vassell with San Antonio, but his contract is huge too. All the options that we're talking about are expiring contracts. Anfernee Simons is $28 million. Let me get his actual salary amount here. Anfernee Simons is $27.7 million next season. He becomes a free agent. Expect that he's going to get close to, if not that, maybe you can get him down to 25. That would be a bargain. But he's going to make $30 million a year. I would expect him to be a $30 million a year player. Colin Sexton next year is owed $19.2 million. Much more palatable, but he's also entering free agency in 2027. And so, look, you have their bird rights. You can re-sign them, no problem. But bird rights don't change the apron realities and the payroll realities. Colin Sexton's probably going to get in that $25 million range too. Kobe White only owed $12.9 million next year. He is a relative bargain. Expect him to have his salary doubled. He'll be a $25 million a year player if he has another season like he had last year. Austin Reeves, another favored target for a lot of people. He's slated to make $13.9 million next year. He is going to decline his $14.9 million player option for the 2027 season. And his agent is already making it clear that he's going to maximize his value. He's going to have a great season. And Eric Pincus of Bleacher Report reports that Reeves is probably looking for a contract starting at $30 million. 20 point per game scorer, that makes sense. the Magic probably are going to acquire one of these players. Like, these are the guys we've talked about for a very, very long time. The Magic are probably going to acquire one of these players. And the reality is the Magic not only have to think about how are we going to match salaries and acquire them in a trade, they already need to be thinking about how much are we willing to pay them in free agency. We only have them for a year, and then we've got to commit $120 million over 4 years to this player. This is part of the dance. This is part of the conflict that's going on in the Magic front office. It's trying to determine this value as much as that value. Is Simons worth Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, Gary Harris, and a first-round pick? I'll let you debate that. Is he worth that plus 4 years over 120 or 120 over 4 years? That's the bigger question. Honestly, that's the question that matters most to the Magic. Now, it is exceptionally difficult to have 4 players cost more than $30 million. That's $120 million committed to 4 players with a $170 million cap. And that's not counting that Franz Wagner is a $40 million player, that Paolo Banchero is a potentially $50 million player if he makes All-NBA next year. I'm assuming he's going to. So that's 150 of your $170 million salary cap in 2027 committed to just 4 players. This is the kind of math we're talking about. It is why that, yes, the Magic can't just assume, like, this is why, yes, it feels ridiculous to consider trading Jalen Suggs. But the Jalen Suggs trade rumor cycle is going to start very quickly because it is exceptionally hard to have all these players. Now, if the Magic are planning on doing this anyway, why not just go get a Trae Young or LaMelo Ball or Darius Garland or one of the bigger name players out there, even a Drew Holiday for 2 years for $30 million or whatever it is? That's a fair thing to say too, because this is what the Magic are going to have to spend. Now, some of it is you go get an Anfernee Simons, maybe in a smaller role, you could convince him to take a $25 million deal. You could backload that. You could front load that. You get to determine how you structure that deal perhaps to benefit you a little bit more. But the reality is still the reality. The reality is still you're going to have to pay that amount. You're going to have to deal with the cap ramifications. It's why it's tough to see the Magic chasing after Cameron Johnson, who is reportedly very much on the trade block for a lottery pick. Magic have a quasi-lottery pick in the 16th pick. It's why the Cameron Johnson isn't the right move, because he's $20 million next year, 22 and 2027. That's going to sit on your bench. This is why that, yes, the Magic have to consider trading Jonathan Isaac, because $15 million off your bench for a player that isn't a 6th man of the year candidate, that's a lot of money. That's a lot of money to spend. And we aren't even getting into Wendell Carter's extension, how that's structured, and how much that's going to add to the till. Wendell Carter is still on his old contract. His new contract kicks in 2027. That is part of the 100. That's part of the, that's why the Magic are over the salary cap before we even get to the 2027 season, just in expected guaranteed compensation. So the cost of doing business right now for the Magic is not only do they have to give up something to get something. Right now, the cost of doing business is how much are we willing to keep the something we just paid a lot to get. And that's sitting in the background of all of this. Now, again, ultimately, you got to have, ultimately, like, I get a lot of people in the comments below on Twitter who just don't believe in this front office, don't believe in the coaching staff, just for whatever reason. And like, some things I can't argue against. Some things are like, like at a certain point, you either have faith in what this franchise is doing or you don't. Is what I did the right move? I believed in Anfernee Simons. I explained why I thought Simons was the better option than Sexton. And I went for the upside swing. I went for the let's just go for it. Let's see what this looks like. You don't trade for an Anfernee Simons. You don't trade for Colin Sexton. You don't trade for Kobe White. You don't trade for any of these players without the intent of keeping them and knowing what their value is. And then knowing what that costs you down the road. And ultimately, again, that's why I went for Simons. Because to me, Simons has the higher upside, has the ability to transform the Magic's offense and make it far more functional than what it has been. And that's ultimately why I went in that direction. So let's wrap up our thoughts. Let's wrap up what we think about this mock draft. What I did at number 25. This will make you happy, or maybe it won't. I don't know. We'll get to that coming up here in just a moment. So the Magic obviously have 2 picks in this draft, and I did want to keep 1 pick. I did want to keep a rookie. Rookie contracts are super valuable, and if there's a player I really like, and there is, I wanted to make sure I used it. I want to make sure I got something out of it. With the acquisition of Anfernee Simons and the inability to trade Cole Anthony, I will say I second guess this pick a little bit, but at the same time, looking at who was drafted after him and who has been drafted before, at the end of the day, I'm like, you know what? I got the guy that I really, really like. I got a player that I really, really like. And I think that ultimately I got someone that I'm going to be able to use, grow, and frees me up to do other things in the offseason. Because again, draft is not the end of the offseason. There's still work to do. There'll still be some things to do. So with the 25th pick in the Locked On NBA mock draft, I went ahead and selected Walter Clayton of Florida. That was a no-brainer. A lot of my other favorite picks were gone. Rasheer Fleming went 16. That was a guy that I was really hoping would still be there at 25. That certainly looks increasingly lower. Trading for a Rasheer Fleming would have freed me up a little bit, maybe to shop Jonathan Isaac a little bit more aggressively. Nick Clifford went 17. Nolan Traore, who I really like, but is probably not the right option for the Magic, went 19. Colin Murray-Boyles dropped in our mock draft down to 22. That might be a player I'd be willing to trade up for. Will Riley went 21. Jace Richardson went 23. I don't love his size, so I don't think he's a Magic player, but obviously he's a guy that a lot of people like. Thomas Sorber, who I was really high on as well as a center option, went 24. And so I was left with really the last guy that I had on my board that I was really excited about, and that's Walter Clayton. We've talked about him on the show before. A lot of Magic fans certainly really, really like him. The Magic need scorers. They need guys who have an instinct to put the ball in the basket. They need a solid three-point shooter. Clayton is not like a tall dude. He's not overly long, but he is a big, stocky dude. I think defense will be an issue for him in the NBA, but ultimately the Magic need guys who can put the ball in the basket. And so this isn't rocket science. To me, this was an obvious decision. This was a, yes, the Magic grabbed a similar player in Anfernee Simons in this mock draft. And so maybe the need isn't as big. Yes, the Magic still have Cole Anthony on the roster. So that's a player that I'm probably shopping around a little bit more now as we get out of the offseason, as we get into the next phase of the offseason. But ultimately, I feel like I can fill my needs. I'm still kind of going to probably pitch a Cole Anthony for Royce O'Neal trade. The Kevin Durant trade did happen in this mock draft. I'll leave that to Locked On Suns to discuss, as well as our friends to the South. You can go seek out analysis of that. I emailed the Suns very, very early on and said, hey, whenever you do the Durant trade, keep me in mind. I want in. I don't want Durant, but I want in. I'm willing to help you out. I've got your pick swap. I'm willing to release it for something good. I still think there are things the Magic can do. And so the offseason doesn't end with the draft. A lot will happen on draft night. The draft night's going to be a very big night for the Magic. But the offseason will continue on, and there'll be other things to do. I think that the Magic can still get a very quality player at 25. If you go back and listen to me on draft nights and looking at draft pools, I am usually very low on draft classes. This year's draft, I am actually particularly high on. I really like the depth of this draft. I think that there are good players. The fact that Jace Richardson fell to 23 in our mock draft, I think says a lot because while his measurables are not great, that is a good player. That is a guy who can put the ball in the basket and is creative around the rim. I'm still a little bit higher on Walter Clayton at the end of the day. LeBaron Philon went after the Magic at 27. Banchero is a guy that I really like. He's 30. The guy that I really, really liked in this draft, Yaxel Lendeborg. If Lendeborg were there at 25, I would have taken him over Walter Clayton. I'm a big fan of Lendeborg. I'm happy he's going back to Michigan. Go get your check, dude. We'll see in the NBA next year. That is a good player, good young player who's still got a lot of room to grow. I think he's going to have a really good season at Michigan as well. I'm happy with Clayton. Like, again, he fills a clear need for the Magic, kind of resets that position a little bit and allows the Magic to kind of search out elsewhere to, maybe cut a little money, cut a little salary. I think that's ultimately the goal here and move this team forward. At the end of the day, and we'll go over this Locked On mock draft again a little bit later, I'll react to what the experts say about how I did. At the end of the day, what I was looking to accomplish was to improve the Magic's offense. I jokingly, we have a spreadsheet where we keep track of the mock draft and kind of see what our notes are. I said that my needs this offseason were shooting, playmaking, creation, point guard, and players who think offense is not optional. Like that was literally what I told people, is like, please give me someone who thinks offense is not optional. I accomplished that. I accomplished a lot of those goals with the Anfernee Simons trade. And again, maybe I paid too much. Maybe the first apron is really something I need to avoid and be a little bit more cognizant of. Maybe I shouldn't have done that without having at least a sense of Cole Anthony's trade market. Again, I could have gotten Colin Sexton for just Cole Anthony in 16. And that's a deal I would normally do. Except I think Simons is just a bigger play and a more aggressive play. And that's ultimately what I wanted to do. But at the end of the day, I come out of this draft with better offensive players, with my guard room completely changed, completely improved. I gave space for Tristan da Silva to potentially get more minutes. I've given space for the Magic to fill a need in free agency or fill a need through another trade. I have, maybe I still have a question at center that I need to answer and some holes that I need to fill. But ultimately, I feel like I maximized what I was going to get at 25. I think getting Walter Clayton at 25 is a great value and a great pick. And ultimately, I think I made a big swing that can transform the Magic's offense. And that's ultimately what I think I was looking to accomplish in this draft. I'm curious what you think. Please rake me over the coals. I'm raking myself over the coals. I have a lot of questions about what I did as well. But the Magic are going to have to take a risk somewhere. There is no perfect trade out there. There is no perfect move of, that makes sense. Maybe the only perfect move is like Kentavious Caldwell-Pope and Cole Anthony for Darius Garland. Like that would be a very transformative trade for the Magic. And really make a statement of intent of, we're going for a championship now. I don't think the Magic are doing that, although Darius Garland is available, is apparently very available, but not very available, but the Cavs are listening at least. They're not doing it without giving up Jalen Suggs. I don't think the Magic are there yet. And so if you can get a player of Anfernee Simons' level, I think that puts you in a very, very good spot to make the kind of improvement you're looking to make. Now, will it work? Will it not work? I have my questions. I have my thoughts about Simons as a player. But on a draft night in this experiment, in this scenario, I think I came away accomplishing at least some of the goals that I'm looking to accomplish. I'm curious what you think. Let me know in the comments below, and we'll go from there. But that's going to do it for me today. I want to thank you all again for listening to today's episode of Locked On Magic. You can, of course, find me on Twitter at @PhilipRR_OMD and on Blue Sky at PhilipRR if you want to yell at me a little further. For the latest on the Orlando Magic, be sure you can also check us out. You can subscribe to the podcast. Let me get through my spiel here. You can subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, Himalaya, Google Play, Spotify, Odyssey, and all places you download podcasts to your podcast-enabled listening device. For the latest on the Orlando Magic, be sure to check out OrlandoMagicDaily.com. You can find us on Twitter at OMagicDaily. And for even more Orlando Magic content, be sure to check out my Patreon page, the Orlando Magic Hub, at patreon.com/Orlando Magic Hub. I have more thoughts on what I did during the Locked On mock draft and what I learned from it. Plus, my player evaluation series continues. I just did Jalen Suggs on Wednesday, so you can check that out at patreon.com/Orlando Magic Hub. As always, thank you for your support. Now that you're done listening to Locked On Magic, go make your second listen to Locked On NBA Big Board Show. NBA draft expert Rafael Barlow reacts to every workout, interview, and rumor leading up to the NBA draft. Find Locked On NBA Big Board on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. That's going to do it for me today, though. I want to thank you all again for listening to today's episode of Locked On Magic for Orlando Magic Daily and Locked On Magic. This has been Philip Rossman-Reich. We'll see you all again next time for another episode of Locked On Magic.